Go.
Chapter 21. Connecticut, New Hampshire, and Maine. No one is ever all bad or all good. The witch trials may have been a low point for the Puritans, but mostly they were good, strong, intelligent people. If they hadn't been, they never would have crossed the ocean. They never would have stayed. They would have just stayed in England, as most English people did. Even when they didn't like they were ruled. Because the Puritans were independent thinkers, they sometimes disagreed with each other. When they did, there was plenty of room in America. They could just start a new settlement. Thomas Hooker was a minister in a little town near Boston when in 1636 he decided to move west. 100 of his followers went with him. He went to the beautiful valley of the Connecticut River. Today, no one is quite sure if he moved because of religious disagreements or because the valley was fertile and farming was easier than in rocky Massachusetts. Perhaps it doesn't matter. He found good farmland and he was free to preach as he wished. Hooker had no charter when he arrived in Connecticut. The king hadn't given permission to be there. He moved in anyway. He had no legal right to the land in the eyes of the English, and certainly none in the eyes of the Native Americans. So the Connecticut settlers sent their governor, John Winthrop II, to England to get a charter. Winthrop, the son of the Massachusetts governor, was kindly, much loved, and a friend of Roger Williams. When the Quakers were hanged in Boston, young Winthrop pleaded for their lives on his bare knees. When he went to see King Charles II, Winthrop wore a handsome ring that had belonged to Anne of Denmark, who happened to be Charles's grandmother. That's the king's grandmother. Winthrop gave the ring to Charles. The king, naturally, was delighted to have his grandmother's ring, and there was no problem. Connecticut got a charter. The land it granted stretched as far west as the Pacific Ocean, although no one knew how far that was. Soon Puritans were heading straight for Connecticut. Massachusetts was getting crowded, and the land in Connecticut was inviting. A group settled at New Haven in 1638 and another at New London in 1646. Each town had its own minister. The New Haven colonists published a list of laws that said how you were to behave. One law said, "Every male shall have his hair cut round." Another said, "Married persons must live together or be in prison, no doubt." When all this was going on, some people were moving north. The king had given a piece of northern land to two friends, John Mason and Fernando Gorges. They divided that land, Gorges taking what became Maine and Mason taking New Hampshire. Mason and Gorges advertised for settlers in England and people came. At first, New Hampshire was part of Massachusetts, with John Mason as its proprietor. Then it became a separate colony. Finally, the king took it back and held it himself as a royal colony. Maine was never a separate colony. It was part of Massachusetts until 1820, when it became the 23rd state. So look up, Maine was never a colony. It was part of Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. Even as a state for a while, for like 30, 40 years. As soon as the colonies were established, they began competing for good land and good people. The more people who came, the more land they needed. The big losers in this contest were the Indians. Serious colonizations could not take place until the Indians had been pushed off the land. And pushed off they would be. So that's sad about the Native Americans. But I'm glad you got to learn about the other New England colonies. Remember, Vermont and Maine were never colonies. They became states later on. All right. Have a good afternoon. Bye.
Bye.